Lastly, let's take a look at your Origins display posters, and we'll give you some ideas for potential revisions. Again, I'll say I know I spoke with some of you guys in class about these, um, so we'll keep that in mind. So some of these might be updated since looking at these revisions. And any questions or potential help you need in our next class meeting to finish these up will work. All right, let's look at Austin's. And again, I'm just going to kind of preview these. Nice. I think overall, visually, this works. I think it reads pretty well. The image works. The colors work well. The products. I think your headline works pretty well. I think the font, I get what you're going with sort of more of a kind of more nature related font. I think the chalk-ish font may not work with this. And I think it might be a little bit too a little bit too spread out because again, keep in mind these in theory these will print at least triple the size. So these are 24 by 36 posters. So again, like we need to sort of keep that in mind. Somewhat lastly, and I don't know, not that I want to change your background to image. Um, to sort of change everything. But I think in some ways this needs a reference to that it's a men's product line, right? So that was part of the point of the assignment was that it was again that sort of traditionally tough market to reach with personal care products and all that. It's an audience that's relatively tough to reach. So I think just a little bit more rather than just sort of like an obvious men's thing, and I'm wondering if you can kind of maybe even just a headline somehow, if you can work that sort of same theme, like put the natural in natural beauty. I'm wondering if there's like some kind of punny thing we can come up with. But I think as far as visually, I like the logo and your products. Everything is well within the safe. And what I might do is, depending on the headline or background image that we use, we meaning you, I think bringing these up a little bit more and maybe even to the left so it appears more as like sort of a block, and then this is a block. Separate them as a pair because it kind of reads since they're almost sort of evenly spread out. It almost looks like it's you know obviously it's one sentence like we put the natural in natural beauty, but you kind of want to give it sort of like a reading rhythm if that makes sense. So I think kind of like we put natural and then that as one sort of text block, and then a more grouped together text block in natural beauty. Sort of give it more of that like visual rhythm. But I think sort of beyond maybe finding a different font and potentially a different image, but we need again that sort of like direct reference to it's a men's line of personal products. But I think overall, as far as a visual and some tweaking with organization, I think the visual works really well. All right, we'll take a look at Amanda's. We had quite a few iterations, and again, we talked about this in class, and I know yours looks different from this one, but I wanted to show it. And one of the things that we talked about was, visually it worked fairly well. I really like this background image. We put in your Origins logo as a vector file, so we copied and pasted it within Illustrator instead of placed it so it wasn't an image, and we could change the color. And then I believe we made this QR, I like the idea of the QR code, but we made it much smaller in the bottom corner because again, these things are going to print really large. And then moved the product. I think we had the QR and the logo here, and then that way we could have the product here. And then we played around with the idea of having that sort of goldish band across the bottom, so we could have no more monkey business, and then get serious with your shampoo. And I think we had needed more of that direct reference to men's care. similarly to Austin's, but uh, again, we've since I've sort of forgotten what we talked about when you've already tweaked this, but but we sort of talked about bookending this gold on the top and the bottom, and that way we could separate this text a little bit more, and then have that direct reference to a men's care product. But organizing this information visually was a little bit more important. So again, making that logo a different color, a little bit smaller, the QR code a little bit smaller next to it, and then that sort of freed up this space here for the shampoo, um, for the shampoo image. I think worked really well. All right, and then JT's. So let's see. Oh, there's a template as I'm going through the wrong things here. So here is, okay, good. Making sure that we have the files here. So I think as far as an image, and as far as how things are generally organized, I think it works pretty well. I think um, I think organizing this a little bit more um, uh, would go a long way here. I know we don't want to like encroach on the image too much, but I think separating, um, or even just losing this one line. I don't know if it's a specific line from something, but I was thinking if we reword it a little bit, because it's a little bit wordy. I was thinking if you wanted to separate this line and have it top, even sort of justified leftish, um, top left, and then have the second line at the bottom, even a little bit bigger, even if you split it onto two lines. So like you had the return right before the how, and then had that um, justified right, um, just so it kind of leads the viewer sort of through the whole piece. And then I would maybe select a couple of different products. If we're going to have that many products, your images need to be much bigger. So if we had that, if you wanted to have this many, have that sort of like in this corner, and then even like yay big, and then that would leave you room to sort of format this line here, or choose a couple of products and have them again. I would have them bottom right. So then you could have logo and then website and then maybe a couple of products, but definitely bigger. Um, so yeah, I think overall, unless there's a reason that I'm missing that we would not want to edit this text, I think maybe editing it a little bit for a little bit of word economy, and then separating those two lines again to sort of give it a pause. So you had like the one line here, pause, and then the second line. But I think as a visual, it's really strong. Just some tweaking to sort of visually organize it a little bit can go a long way. All right, we'll talk about Ashton's here. We talked about this a little bit in class, so I'm honestly a little bit unsure if we've taken it further from seeing this or not. But I really like this strong visual. I think the way that the logo works with the image, and then you have the product works really well. I think my main issue is with the text here. I feel like if we just had sort of one, if we could distill this to like, um, to one line about, I don't know, off the top, it's tough to come up with something. But I think you've left yourself room um, to have, maybe a one or two line sort of tagline. It's not really a headline, but a tagline here. Um, you could have, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm kind of blanking on a way to sort of refine this to like one or two lines, but well, we can make it work. We have plenty of time to think about it. But I think overall, that would really be the one. I mean, it's pretty major, but the one, sort of relatively minor thing. I would distill this to more of like a tagline. If there's a way we can pull out the sentiment of this, um, and then have like a 1 or 2 line sort of tagline here. I think visually you've set yourself up with a really nice sort of easy-ish template to fill out here. Again, I know we talked about making this product a little bit bigger and setting some of the things up. I think again, I think just kind of refining that paragraph essentially to like a 1 or 2 line tagline, and then fitting it in here with a more sort of relatively not plain, but it's a little bit hard to read. You have similar colors competing here with a foreground and background. So just formatting the text a little bit, maybe a bolder font, and again refining that tagline will help a lot. But I think just really refining that tagline is where you are going to be for completing this particular design. All right, talking about Lauren's. Okay, there's a couple of different things going on here. I think for the most part, visually it makes sense. I think I don't know if we copied and pasted these or drag and dropped these, but these are formatted so that they have clipping paths on them, so you don't get these awkward squares. So that's something that we can definitely work on. I like the idea that you have going on here. I think your headline works really well. I think maybe what we can do is definitely refine this to a few products. My suggestion would be maybe making this logo a little bit smaller overall. Keep the relative placement, but make it a little bit smaller overall. And then you could have potentially, if you wanted to, like 1 or 2 of the larger products like these on this side, and then maybe like these 2 on this side, and then a couple of the smaller ones like the soap. So you're kind of like boxing it in here. But again, when we place these images, they'll have the clipping paths on them so that they won't have these awkward boxes. But essentially kind of like frame this Origins logo with a few of the products, maybe be a little bit more, refined with what products that we're featuring. But I think overall, what we could do is have your headline or tagline, I think works really well. We could have the best of care, and then you could even have at the bottom for the best of men to sort of, again, give it that sort of reading rhythm. So I think just kind of like separating this tagline, roughly keeping your background image exactly how it is, making this a little bit smaller, editing and refining the products that we're using, and have more of like a handful and sort of frame out the bottom, and then you can finish it off with having your the rest of your tagline at the bottom, and that would allow you to make that tagline a little bit bigger. Essentially keep the font the same. A thinner font works totally fine. If it was a little bit bigger, then it would read a little bit more clearer too. But I think just sort of like separating that again, and then framing this logo, to repeat myself for like a 4th time. And then we can work on placing these images properly so that they don't have those boxes around it. But I think overall, it's super, super strong start. All right, then Sarah's. So just to go through, oh, that's right, we had a couple. So we talked about this in class. This was the first one that I saw. And so I gave her some feedback maybe to like separate these 2 a little bit, kind of like I just did with Lauren's, to sort of separate these so it's not just like one giant block of text, and to sort of work with the image a little bit more, and then lose this block, and then have it directly relate to like a men's care line. And then she had this one as a refined, which works pretty well. I would kind of, for this, I like the idea of what you have here. I would kind of leave it, and I might do the exact opposite though. Instead of having it aligned like this, I might try to see how aligning it in like sort of the mirror of this. So it was like, say hello to healthy skin kind of going this way. So you had this kind of like, bookendish look. And then we want to make sure that we're not distorting the logos and the products, which we have here. We could potentially make this a little bit bigger, make this logo a little bit bigger, but we want to just make sure that we're not distorting the images at all. And then lastly, I know we talked about it a little bit, but was if there was some sort of direct reference, again with men's personal care products, even if it was a line across the bottom, personal care for men or something like that. So you had like origins, personal care for men. But yeah, I would sort of organize this in a similar way. In a similar way to how you have this organized. So it's, sort of bookended, and maybe even change the color of this so it's a little bit more, um, I guess, maybe more friendly. I guess if this was red or pinkish, like you're irritated, and then you had these, bluish or more like cooler color, so that you had like the sort of bookend, irritated and then calm, and then how they're sort of organized in a similar way, but like mirrored, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think a super strong start. Definitely a different visual than we had here, which was everything was kind of like you were almost there. Everything was a bit cluttered, and then we changed it to sort of break those apart a little bit. Um, I think just some more minor tweaking to really finish this one off. All right, then Eileen's. We'll look at this one as Eileen says. Um, yeah, this one had a couple of different iterations. I'll go through them anyway just to show you guys the differences. So we have some, obviously some different text treatments. You can see. Um, my potential suggestion, I don't know if you tried it or not, but when we talked about this in class, was um, making this a little bit more simple. It worked well. I like the idea of um, some of the products. Um, I kind of get that or at least this is what I'm reading, that he's actually kind of like somewhat like physically smelling this. I might just have maybe one, maybe even just the soap, if that's what you were kind of going with, and see how that works, or move them a little bit down if that's not, if he wasn't like sort of literally smelling these. Um, and then potentially swapping where the Origins logo is, seeing if it works here, or even changing the color a little bit, so that it reads a little bit better, or we can work with a different type of drop shadow. Lastly, I would kind of say um, maybe putting this on two lines, um, Fresh Scents for Men, and making it a little bit bigger, just so it definitely like pops out, like even like bigger than this. That's why I feel like if you put that on two lines and have it here, um, so that it definitely reads like that's kind of like your sort of punchline or your ending to the tagline there. So I would make it a little bit more obvious, and then potentially we can play around with different ideas for the products here. They're kind of like I get that they're floating, but they're kind of, slightly awkward if we rearrange them a little bit, maybe have this bottle a little bit smaller behind, essentially sort of swap how you have these arranged. But we can work on that. Minor tweaks to sort of arrange these products. Again, I would get this on two lines, maybe a bit, definitely make it a bit larger so that you can read it. Potentially swap where these two are. The logo and your tagline, but definitely make that secondary tagline bigger so that you get that sort of like punchline. But I think overall, a super strong visual, a really good concept, and just some minor tweaks to finish this one off.